My husband thought leaving me 37 miles from home in the pouring rain would teach me a lesson. He had no idea what lesson he was about to learn. I'm Jessica, and for the past 3 years, I thought I was living the American dream. Successful marketing executive, beautiful home in the suburbs, and a charming husband who knew exactly what to say at dinner parties. Michael had this way of making everyone laugh, of being the center of attention wherever we went. People used to tell me how lucky I was to have found someone so charismatic, so confident. What they didn't see were the small cracks that had started appearing in our perfect facade. It began with innocent questions. "Jessica, why do you need your own checking account? Aren't we supposed to be a team?" Michael would ask, his voice dripping with concern that felt more like control. When I mentioned wanting to keep some financial independence, he'd tilt his head with that patronizing smile. "Baby, that sounds like you're planning to leave me. Is that what you want?" The guilt trips were masterful. He'd learned exactly which buttons to push, how to make me question my own instincts. When my best friend Sarah invited me for our monthly girls' night, Michael would suddenly have a work crisis that required my emotional support. "I just don't understand why your friends are more important than your husband's career," he'd say, looking genuinely hurt. "Sarah doesn't really get our relationship anyway. She's been single for so long, she probably doesn't want to see you happy." Slowly, systematically, my social circle began to shrink. Coffee dates got canceled. Phone calls went unanswered. Not because I didn't want to maintain those friendships, but because every time I tried, Michael made me feel selfish for prioritizing anyone else over our marriage. The gaslighting was perhaps the most insidious part. I'd remember conversations one way, and Michael would insist they'd happened completely differently. "Jessica, you're being way too sensitive," became his favorite phrase. "I never said that. You're remembering it wrong." After months of this, I started questioning my own memory, my own perception of reality. But I'm not stupid. I have a master's degree in business. I run successful marketing campaigns for Fortune 500 companies. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. So I started doing what I do best. I began documenting everything. I purchased a small digital recorder and started keeping it in my purse. Not because I was planning anything dramatic, but because I needed to trust my own sanity. I'd replay conversations later, just to confirm that yes, he really had said those cruel things. Yes, the way I remembered it was accurate. The recordings revealed a pattern that was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Michael wasn't just dismissive, he was calculating. He'd wait until I was tired, stressed from work, or emotionally vulnerable to deliver his most cutting remarks. "Maybe if you spent less time at the office and more time taking care of your husband, you'd understand what a real relationship looks like," he'd say after I'd worked late on a crucial presentation. What really opened my eyes was discovering our financial situation wasn't what I thought it was. I'd always contributed equally to our joint account, but when I started paying closer attention, I noticed money disappearing, large transfers to an account I didn't recognize. When I asked Michael about it, he became defensive immediately. "Are you accusing me of something, Jessica? Because that's a really ugly side of you I haven't seen before." He'd turn it around, make me the villain for asking legitimate questions about our shared finances. "I'm handling our investments. Do you want to micromanage everything I do? Because that doesn't sound like a marriage, that sounds like a prison." That's when I knew I needed help. Not therapy for our relationship. I was past believing this could be fixed. I needed protection, and I needed an exit strategy. I'd always prided myself on being independent, but the truth was, Michael had slowly eroded my confidence in my ability to handle conflict. He was 6'2", former college football player, and had a temper that could explode without warning. I needed someone who could level the playing field if things got ugly. That's how I found David. David Martinez was a former Marine, now running a small personal security business. His website was professional but understated. Client testimonials mentioned his discretion, his ability to handle difficult situations without escalation, and his experience with domestic protection cases. When we met for coffee to discuss my situation, he didn't ask unnecessary questions or make me feel like I was overreacting. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice calm and measured, "you don't need to justify why you feel unsafe. If you think you need protection, then you need protection. My job is to make sure you have options if the situation becomes dangerous." I hired David on a retainer basis. Nothing dramatic, just knowing that if I needed him, he was a phone call away. He gave me a discreet GPS tracker for my phone and a small panic button disguised as a keychain charm. "Hopefully you'll never need to use these," he said, "but if you do, I'll be wherever you are within 20 minutes. The irony wasn't lost on me. My husband, who claimed to love and protect me, had created a situation where I needed to hire actual protection from him. For weeks, I continued playing the role of the dutiful wife while quietly building my safety net. I consulted with a divorce attorney, opened a separate bank account, and began moving small amounts of money to secure my financial independence. I documented every controlling behavior, every cruel comment, every red flag that I'd been ignoring for months. Michael seemed oblivious to my preparations. His behavior was escalating, becoming more controlling and erratic. He started checking my phone, questioning where I'd been during lunch breaks, and making increasingly unreasonable demands about how I should spend my time. "I think you should quit your job," he announced one evening over dinner. "We don't need the money, and I'm tired of coming home to an empty house. A real wife would prioritize her family." That's when I knew the end was coming soon. Michael was testing how much control he could exert, pushing boundaries to see if I'd comply with increasingly unreasonable demands. In his mind, a good wife would sacrifice her career, her independence, her identity for his comfort. He had no idea that his good wife had been preparing for war. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd had a particularly successful day at work. We'd landed a major client, and my boss had hinted at a promotion. I came home excited to share the news, foolishly thinking Michael might be proud of my achievement. Instead, he was furious. "You're late," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "Dinner was supposed to be ready an hour ago." "Michael, I texted you about the client meeting running over. This is huge for us. The commission alone will cover our mortgage for 3 months. He slammed the laptop shut. "Us? There is no us in your career, Jessica. You make these decisions without consulting me. You prioritize strangers over your own husband, and then you expect me to celebrate your selfishness?" The argument escalated quickly. Michael's voice got louder, his movements more aggressive. He cornered me in the kitchen, his face inches from mine, his tone shifting from anger to something much colder. "You know what your problem is? You've forgotten what's really important. You think because you make some money, you don't need to respect your husband anymore. Maybe you need a reminder about who's really in charge here." That's when he came up with his brilliant plan to teach me a lesson. "Get in the car," he said, grabbing his keys. "We're going for a drive." I knew better than to argue when Michael was in this mood. I followed him to the garage, my phone discreetly tucked in my jacket pocket with David's number ready to dial. Something about Michael's demeanor felt different tonight, more calculated, more dangerous. We drove in silence for over an hour. Michael took back roads I didn't recognize, winding through rural areas outside the city. The October rain had started as a light drizzle, but was now coming down hard, drumming against the windshield. When he finally pulled over on a deserted stretch of highway, my heart started racing. "Get out," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Michael, what are you doing? We're in the middle of nowhere." "I said get out, Jessica, unless you want me to drag you out." The rain was coming down in sheets now. I could see the lights of the city in the distance, at least 35 miles away. No houses nearby, no gas stations, just empty roads stretching in both directions. "Michael, this is insane. You can't just leave me here." He looked at me with genuine satisfaction, like he was enjoying my confusion and fear. "Maybe now you'll understand what it feels like to be abandoned. Maybe you'll appreciate what you have when you get home. If you get home. How am I supposed to get back? Figure it out. Call one of those friends who are so important to you. Call your precious boss. See if any of them care enough to drive 37 miles to pick you up in the rain." He started the engine, rolling down the window just enough to deliver his final message. "When you're ready to apologize for putting everything else before your marriage, call me. Maybe I'll come get you. Maybe I won't." Then he drove away, leaving me standing on the side of the highway in the pouring rain, 37 miles from home. But here's what Michael didn't know. As soon as I'd gotten out of the car, I'd pressed the panic button on my keychain. David's GPS system could track my exact location, and he was already on his way. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't call my friends or my boss to rescue me. Instead, I stood there in the rain, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. This wasn't just cruelty. This was abandonment. This was abuse. And this was the last time Michael Thompson would ever have power over me. Headlights appeared in the distance, cutting through the rain. A black pickup truck slowed and pulled over exactly where I was standing. The driver's door opened, and David stepped out, calm, professional, and completely unsurprised by the situation. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, opening an umbrella and walking toward me. "Are you hurt?" "No," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "But this is over." As I climbed into the warm truck, I felt something shift inside me. Michael thought he was teaching me a lesson about dependence, about knowing my place, about respecting his authority. Instead, he'd just given me the final piece of evidence I needed to destroy him completely. "Where to?" David asked as we pulled back onto the highway. "Home," I said, pulling out my phone to call my attorney. "But first, I need to make some calls. Michael's about to learn what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman." The rain continued to fall as we drove back toward the city, but I wasn't cold anymore. I was furious, focused, and finally ready to fight back. Michael had made his last mistake. The ride back to the city gave me exactly what I needed. Time to think clearly without Michael's manipulation clouding my judgment. David drove professionally, giving me space to process while staying alert to our surroundings. The steady rhythm of rain against the windshield was almost therapeutic after the chaos of the evening. "Mrs. Thompson," David said quietly, "I've seen situations like this before. What your husband did tonight, leaving you stranded in dangerous conditions, that's not just controlling behavior. That's criminal abandonment. You have options." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my attorney's emergency number. Lisa Chin had been clear during our initial consultation. "When you're ready to move forward, don't hesitate to call. These situations tend to escalate quickly." "Lisa, it's Jessica Thompson. Yes, I know it's late, but Michael just crossed a line we can't come back from." What I told Lisa over the next 10 minutes wasn't just about tonight's incident. It was about months of documented evidence I'd been carefully collecting. The financial irregularities, the recorded conversations, the systematic isolation from friends and family, and now this, actual abandonment in dangerous conditions. "Jessica, what you're describing constitutes several forms of domestic abuse," Lisa said, her voice sharp with professional concern. "The financial control alone gives us grounds for emergency protective orders. The abandonment tonight? That's reckless endangerment. We can file for divorce and request immediate asset protection first thing tomorrow morning." By the time David pulled into my driveway, I had a plan. Lisa would file emergency paperwork at 8 a.m. David would maintain security at the house in case Michael returned in an aggressive state, and I would finally stop pretending this marriage could be saved. Michael's car wasn't in the garage, probably at his favorite bar, celebrating his brilliant lesson in wifely obedience. He had no idea that his phone was about to start ringing with very unpleasant news. I walked through our house with new eyes, seeing it not as the home we'd built together, but as evidence of the life I was about to reclaim. Family photos where Michael's smile looked predatory rather than charming. The home office where he'd hidden financial documents from me. The kitchen where he'd cornered me just hours ago. My laptop was exactly where I'd left it, password protected and containing 3 months of carefully documented evidence. Screenshots of our joint account showing mysterious transfers, audio recordings of Michael's most manipulative conversations, photos of him at restaurants with his coworker Amanda, the same Amanda whose number appeared frequently on our phone bill. That's right. Michael thought I was too stupid to notice his affair. Amanda Rodriguez from his marketing firm had been texting my husband for months. Lunch meetings that ran long, conference calls that required weekend visits to her apartment, hotel receipts that didn't match his claimed business trips. I'd hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago, and the evidence was comprehensive and damaging. Michael wasn't just a controlling husband, he was a cheating one, and in our state, adultery affected asset division in divorce proceedings. I spent the next 2 hours organizing everything into neat folders: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, infidelity evidence, and tonight's new addition: criminal abandonment. Each file was meticulously documented with dates, locations, and corroborating evidence. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Hope you learned your lesson. Call when you're ready to apologize." I screenshot the message and added it to the evidence file. Then I blocked his number. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. David arrived at 7 a.m., positioning himself discreetly in his truck across the street. Lisa met me at the courthouse at 8 a.m. sharp, briefcase in hand and determination in her eyes. "Jessica, I've reviewed everything you sent me last night. This is one of the strongest domestic abuse cases I've seen this year. The financial documentation alone proves systematic economic control. Combined with the abandonment incident and evidence of adultery, we're not just filing for divorce, we're going for everything." The emergency hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. Judge Patricia Morrison had a reputation for taking domestic abuse cases seriously, especially when the evidence was as comprehensive as ours. While Lisa filed paperwork, I made other necessary calls. My bank, to alert them about potential unauthorized access to accounts; my employer, to request emergency family leave; and Michael's employer, to inform them that their senior marketing director was about to become the subject of very public legal proceedings. That last call was particularly satisfying. "Human Resources? This is Jessica Thompson, Michael Thompson's wife. I need to speak with someone about a situation that may affect Michael's employment status. He's about to be served with divorce papers citing domestic abuse, financial fraud, and adultery with a coworker named Amanda Rodriguez." The silence on the other end was telling. Michael's company had a strict ethics policy, and interdepartmental affairs were explicitly prohibited. Combined with the potential legal liability of employing someone facing abuse charges, Michael's career was about to become very complicated. At 1:15 p.m., David called with an update. "Mrs. Thompson, your husband just pulled into the driveway. He looks agitated. The process server is ready to deliver the papers as soon as he gets out of his car." I could picture Michael's confusion perfectly, coming home expecting to find his chastened wife ready to apologize, only to be handed legal documents that would change his life forever. My phone started ringing at 1:23 p.m. Michael, calling from the house landline since I'd blocked his cell. I let it ring, then it rang again, and again. The voicemails were exactly what I expected. The first one was angry. "Jessica, what the hell is this? You can't just file for divorce because we had a fight. This is ridiculous, and you're going to regret it." The second was bargaining. "Baby, I know you're upset about last night, but this is extreme. We can work through this. You don't need lawyers and restraining orders. Come home and let's talk like adults." The third was threatening. "You have no idea what you're starting, Jessica. I will destroy you in court. You'll get nothing, and everyone will know what kind of vindictive, unstable woman you really are." I forwarded all 3 voicemails to Lisa. "More evidence," she texted back. "See you at court." Judge Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd built her career on family law. She reviewed our evidence with the thoroughness it deserved: financial records, recorded conversations, abandonment documentation, and proof of Michael's affair. Michael's hastily hired attorney was clearly unprepared for the scope of evidence we'd presented. Michael himself looked exactly how I'd imagined: shocked, angry, and completely blindsided by the reality that his actions had consequences. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Morrison said, her voice cutting through the courtroom with authority, "the evidence presented here today demonstrates a pattern of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and reckless endangerment of your spouse. The court is granting Mrs. Thompson's request for emergency asset protection and a temporary restraining order." Michael started to object, but his attorney wisely silenced him. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the evidence of adultery and financial deception will be fully considered in final asset division. Mr. Thompson, you are ordered to vacate the marital home immediately and maintain no contact with Mrs. Thompson except through legal counsel." The gavel came down with finality that echoed through the room. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete freedom. Michael was standing on the steps, his face a mixture of rage and disbelief, but he couldn't approach me. David was there immediately, a physical barrier between my past and my future. "Ma'am," David said quietly, "your ex-husband is making some aggressive gestures. I recommend we leave through the side exit." But I wasn't running anymore. I walked straight past Michael, looking him directly in the eyes for the first time in months without fear or apology. 37 miles, I said simply. "That's how far you drove to abandon me. That's also how far you just fell." The next few weeks moved quickly. Michael's employer placed him on administrative leave pending investigation into the workplace affair. His attempt to drain our joint accounts was blocked by court order. The private investigator's photos of him with Amanda appeared in divorce filings that became public record. Most satisfying was watching Michael's social media presence crumble. His carefully curated image as a devoted husband dissolved when mutual friends started asking uncomfortable questions. The man who'd controlled every aspect of our relationship suddenly had no control over his own narrative. Amanda, it turned out, wasn't his only affair. The private investigator had uncovered evidence of at least 3 other relationships during our marriage. Michael's pattern of manipulation extended far beyond our home. He'd been lying to everyone about everything for years. His family was mortified. His professional reputation was destroyed. His financial assets were frozen pending final divorce proceedings. The man who'd tried to teach me a lesson about dependence discovered what real powerlessness felt like. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment, a beautiful loft downtown that I'd purchased entirely with my own income. David had become a friend rather than just security, occasionally joining me for coffee to check in on my adjustment to independent life. "Any regrets?" he asked during one of our catch-up conversations. I thought about it seriously. Only that I waited so long to fight back. I spent months letting him convince me I was crazy, that I was asking for too much, that I should be grateful for his attention. I wasted so much time trying to fix something that was deliberately broken. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in February. Michael got his clothes, his car, and 30% of assets, far less than he would have received without the adultery and abuse evidence. I got the house, the majority of our savings, and something far more valuable: my life back. The legal victory was complete, but the personal transformation was even more significant. I'd rediscovered confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. My work performance had improved dramatically without the constant stress of managing Michael's emotions. Friendships I thought were lost had been eagerly rekindled when I reached out. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust my instincts again. The woman who doubted her own memory and questioned her own judgment was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth and wouldn't accept less than she deserved. 6 months after that rainy night on the highway, I received an unexpected call from Amanda Rodriguez. She'd been fired from Michael's company after the affair investigation concluded. Apparently, Michael had promised to leave me for her, had told her I was unstable and manipulative, had painted himself as the victim of a controlling wife. "I just wanted to apologize," she said, her voice shaky with embarrassment. "I had no idea he was lying about everything. He told me you two were already separated, that you were making his life miserable. I would never have gotten involved if I'd known the truth." "Amanda," I said gently, "you weren't the problem. Michael was. He manipulated both of us, just in different ways. I hope you've learned the same lesson I did. Some people will say anything to get what they want." After we hung up, I realized that conversation had given me something unexpected: closure. Not because Amanda had apologized, but because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Michael's manipulation wasn't personal. It wasn't about me being insufficient or difficult or too demanding. It was simply who he was: someone who took what he wanted without regard for the people he hurt in the process. That evening, I stood in my new kitchen making dinner for one and feeling completely content. No one was monitoring my time, questioning my choices, or making me feel guilty for existing. The silence in my apartment wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. My best friend who'd been so patient during my marriage's decline. Girls' night this Friday? There's a new wine bar downtown we should try. I typed back immediately, absolutely, I'll be there. 2 years ago, that simple response would have required Michael's permission, would have triggered a fight about my priorities, would have ended with me canceling to keep peace in my marriage. Now, it was just Tuesday night plans with a friend. Michael had intended to teach me about dependence, about knowing my place, about the consequences of prioritizing anything over his needs. Instead, he'd taught me about independence, about knowing my worth, and about the consequences of underestimating the wrong woman. Some lessons can only be taught once, and some mistakes can never be undone. As I locked my apartment door that night, setting the security system that I controlled in the home that I owned, living the life that I'd chosen, I smiled thinking about that rainy highway where everything changed. 37 miles had never felt so far away.